Hello and welcome to this podcast series on the new European General Data Protection Regulations, the GDPR. My name's Steve Lofthouse, a GDPR specialist with the Proceed Group, and in this series we're going to be looking at the various pieces of SAP software that will help companies in their journey to becoming GDPR compliant and maintaining that compliance moving forwards. Now, it's important to remember that the GDPR is both mandatory and demonstrable. You have to be compliant and you also have to be able to demonstrate compliance. All of the software tools we're looking at in this series are going to enable you to do that. And in this particular podcast, we're going to be looking at SAP's Access Control package. Now, companies may feel that they already have access control in place. We give our employees passwords and that allows them to use the various computer systems. But when you scale that to an IT landscape that sits across many different servers and many different applications, and you scale that in increasing staff numbers, then access control really does become an issue for companies. If you look at the text of the GDPR, there is all the way through this requirement that on the one hand you secure access to your customers' data, your data subjects' data, and you do so in a manner which is auditable, that you demonstrate compliance with the regulations. There are a number of definitions within the GDPR for a data breach, and an employee having access to client data, customer data that they are not supposed to be able to have access to, and an employee utilising that access, that is considered a data breach under the terms of the GDPR. So there is a real need for companies to improve their management of access and improve their access control. Now, some companies may well have access control, SAP's access control package already in place. And to you, I would say, fantastic. Now is the time to review the rules and policies that you have in place embedded within access control, and we'll touch on that as we move forwards. For those people that don't have access control, that are kind of curious as to what access control does as a package and how that enables you to comply with the GDPR, we'll kind of wander through some of the functionality and link that across. So, first of all, access control is a software asset from SAP. It's an application that enables you to allocate access to various functions within your IT software landscape, within your SAP landscape. The software is capable of managing software assets that are non-SAP. You can plug in other applications from other vendors. Now, the application itself has quite a robust and complex security mechanism within it. The rule base has been designed and aligned to the many business processes that sit within the SAP portfolio, and you can configure those rule bases if you wish, or you can just kind of take things out of the box. Now, you can use access control to run various simulations against the various roles within it, so that you could see how the software would affect your IT landscape, and you could do that in a risk-based way. So what are the risks associated with giving this role particular access to this particular functionality? So we can do kind of pre-audits and kind of risk modelling prior to rolling out access to various systems. Now, having done these kind of pre-audits, we can start and kind of roll out access to various systems, and we can do that in a number of different ways. The easiest and possibly the best and safest thing to do would be to link the assignment of access to these various systems, to these various business processes, to the HR computer system. That would be the best thing to do, because then when you move into a company, when you're taken on board, when you're giving a new employee a role within the company, the request for access, the request for authorization to these various systems comes out of the HR system and into access control. So we can automate the provision of access to various systems. Now, the advantage, the big advantage of being able to plug SAP Access Control into the HR system, SAP HR, is that as you move through your employee life cycle, so shall we say, as you gain promotion, as you move into different roles, as you take on more responsibility, that is reflected in the HR record. And off the back of that, the requests for access, for changes in the employee's access provision comes automatically out of the HR record. So as the employee moves through the company, moves through different roles, the HR system automatically requests these changed permissions from the access control system, and that is handled automatically and transparently. The other major advantage of that is that when an employee leaves the company, the HR system automatically triggers that request to the access control system to cut off the employee's access to the information systems and these information assets. So we can integrate that into the SAP HR software. We can also integrate SAP Access Control into the NetWeaver portal. So there's the NetWeaver Identity Management portal, and we can integrate it into there, and then we can get these web service requests coming in from other systems. So we can link SAP Access Control out into the wider IT landscape. There's also an ability for employees to use a self-service portal. So one of the kind of problems, if you want to put it like that, with identity management is that sometimes employees need access to different systems. They get a little bit more responsibility. It's not necessarily a change of role, but I've now got a little bit more responsibility and I do need, shall we say, a wider access footprint. So SAP Access Control has this web-based portal where employees can go and request access to these different systems. They can request a change in their access profile. There is a business process that sits behind that request, and that request is passed on to the manager as specified in that business process. Now, the advantage of this and the good thing about the SAP Identity Management software, and something which is very useful with a GDPR hat on, is that rather than just sending this request for increased access straight to the manager and saying, you know, please can Jeff have this, the access control software runs a risk-based analysis on that request prior to sending it on. So the authorizer, the manager who's going to authorize this request, is not just going to see a straightforward, please can Jeff have access to this. That manager's going to see a bit of a breakdown from the access control. Can Jeff have access to this system? Given Jeff's role, that is very low risk. It's not going to have a big impact. Or given Jeff's current role and assignments, that's quite a risky thing to do. Now, it's running that risk assessment based upon the rules that are built into it. There are a lot of rules built into it from a GRC perspective, from a segregation of duty perspective, and these rules are extended, can be extended to account for some of the segregation of duties, some of the enhanced security that's going to be needed to be compliant with the GDPR. So we can have this self-service management portal, employee portal, where they can request access, and that comes with this kind of enhanced risk analysis and then sending on. So we've got far more kind of granular control over our access to various information assets. So that's one aspect of the access control software. The other useful aspect to it is this idea that I can audit. And I can do audit in a number of different ways. So I could audit from the perspective of a system. So I could put my HR system at the centre of the audit, and I could audit outwards in terms of which employees had access to this system, what kind of data do they have access to. Then I could kind of take a slightly different viewpoint and say, okay, well, how does that fit across my landscape? If I take an employee who has the highest level of access to my HR system, what other systems does that employee have access to? Do my customer service representatives have access to our finance system? Can they see the financial profile of our clients? So I can audit the security assignments, the access assignments, from a few different points of view. I can look at it from a role point of view, I can look at it from a user access point of view, I can look at it from a system point of view. So I can audit. The last thing that access control is really, really useful for is that kind of common scenario where we have a consultant who comes into the company to do a piece of work, or one of our IT crew needs to do a piece of work on a system, and in order to do that work they need enhanced access, they need enhanced privileges. We could sit down and try and figure out what privileges, what access they're going to need to do the piece of work, because the piece of work they're going to do sits across multiple landscapes. It's a bit of a nightmare, there's a pressured situation, it's having an impact on the business. We really need this consultant to get access to the systems and start work and get this thing working and up and running. So what do? Well, we tend to give them a kind of super user permission. And because that's the easiest way to do it, we give them a super user permission, and we set them off, and they go and they do the job that needs to be done, and they leave. And when we gave them the super user, we got them to sign a piece of paper which said that they promised to do nothing wrong, do no evil, as it were. And we decided that yes, we were going to audit their use and see what they've been up to when they left. But they leave, and now I've got 1,000,001 jobs that I need to do, and I'm getting pulled in different directions, and I just haven't got time to audit that. I need to go and pull through audit logs. It's going to be a bit of a nuisance. Oh. This is where access control is your friend. This is where access control comes to the rescue. So with SAP Access Control, I can manage that provision in a much better way. So SAP Access Control has within it the ability to allocate what we call firefighter provision, these emergency authorizations, and they can be done either through the employee self-service portal, backed up with the business process that would move that towards a manager for authorization, or users can be allocated firefighter access. Firefighter permissions, as we call them. But it's the business process that happens afterwards. So when that consultant has left, when that job's been done, the access control software shuts off that firefighter permission and then gathers the audit log up, goes and gets the audit log, gathers the audit log up for that particular firefighter identity, looks at what the user had done, and then emails a report to the manager. There is a business process that sits behind it. So it's pushing that report out to the manager. It's in a form that the manager can access and easily see what the employee, what the consultant was doing. And then there's a process behind it that allows you to follow up on any suspicious activity. So if you plug that into process control, you have a mechanism where not only can you manage the allocation of these so-called firefighter permissions and then manage reviewing the audit afterwards, you've got a process that you can plug into to then manage the ability to follow up on any discrepancies within that log. Now, if you feed that back and go back and look at the GDPR, so the GDPR tells us that we have to maintain the security of our citizens' data. Well, SAP Access Control, is going to allow us to do that. We're maintaining the security of our users' data, of our data subjects, by restricting access to that data in a thought out and automatic way. The GDPR requires us to implement security by design and by default. SAP Access Control feeds into that. It is part of this secure by design and by default. If you don't have the right kind of permissions, you can't access these information resources, you can't access these business processes. The GDPR requires us to operate in a manner which is provable, auditable. Can we demonstrate that our users can only access the information that they are allowed to in order to do their role? Do we audit that on a regular basis? Can we prove on an ongoing basis that employee B does not accumulate inappropriate permissions as they move through the company, as they progress with their career? So the audit capabilities of SAP Access Control are going to allow us to demonstrate that. And, as we said earlier, SAP Access Control does not just sit on its own. It doesn't just manage access to SAP systems. It manages access to systems from other vendors as well. So you can plug in other software assets into SAP Access Control and have the software manage access to those assets and to the data that's stored within those assets as well. Now, SAP Access Control was the final piece of software that we were going to be covering in this particular podcast series. We've talked about SAP Information Steward to start off with, which was a software asset that was going to enable us to discover the data within our systems. We've talked about SAP Information Lifecycle Management, which is a software asset which is going to allow us to move data from our live systems into our archiving systems, manage that transfer, and then go on and manage the retention and the deletion and the correction, the holding of that particular data. So we've talked about that. We've talked about SAP Process Control. SAP Process Control managing all these GDPR policies within the company, managing the process of doing data protection impact assessments, managing the provision of policies out to our users, and managing the provision of policy against various processes, managing the use of controls within processes so that we can monitor and audit our processing landscape and ensures that it complies with the Data Protection Act. the General Data Protection Regulations. There is a new Data Protection Act in front of the UK Parliament at the moment, and that takes various aspects of the GDPR that were left open, left up to individual nation states to legislate against. So the Data Protection Directive is in front of Parliament now, and that's going to put down a few additional requirements, put down a few, some clarification around various areas. But on the whole, the 4 pieces of software that we've covered in this series are going to go a long way to ensuring that companies are compliant with the GDPR and maintain compliance moving forwards. And I phrase it like that. I say that it's going to go a long way to ensuring that companies are compliant, because the GDPR requires more than just software assets to be compliant. There are policies, procedures, staff training, awareness, and a corporate culture that has to be put in place as well in order to be GDPR compliant. So the GDPR is far more than just software assets. It's also about embedding these policies, these procedures, and this corporate culture within the company. So I hope you found the information in this series useful. This was the last of these podcasts, although we do have a blog series running, and that particular series is aligned to the Information Commissioner's 12 steps. And we've added to that, we've taken our knowledge and our experience of working with SAP and SAP data, and our knowledge and experience of working with clients on various GDPR compliance projects to produce a blog series which has more meat on the bones. It's about helping you to become GDPR compliant. So I would encourage you to check out that particular series. The easiest way to find it is to use your favourite internet search engine and search for the proceedgroup.com GDPR. My name's Steve Lofthouse. Thank you very much.